Hello and welcome to another great screencast from teachmetocode.com. This one we're going to go over how to create a Twitter clone. Now Twitter is a very popular application, of course, that is in essence very simple. All you really have is a user. That user has a relationship to other users, and you can follow each other, and you're able to update a single column in the database with your current status, and everything's time-stamped and searchable. So we're going to show you how to create one of these things. Now I'm kind of going off the cuff here. I haven't done this yet, so we're gonna learn as we go. So I wanted this screencast to partially be so you can kind of get in the mind of a programmer. I might not be the typical programmer, but at least you'll kind of see where my mindset is. So let's get started. First thing I want to do is I want to be able to create the application. I just make this a little bit bigger here. So let's go into my here and call it, instead of Twitter, we're going to call it Flitter. Okay. Now I use TextMate as my primary editor. You can use whatever you want. I am a fan of RubyMine. However, I guess old habits die hard, and I've been using TextMate for quite a while. So first thing we need to do is create our authentication. Now the easiest way to create authentication is using Ryan Bates' generator, which generates authentication. So I'm gonna do that. But first I'm going to use his layout builder to create just a standard layout, and then we'll move on from there. But to do that, first you got to install the gems. So actually, let me show you where you can find it. And we have here the nifty generators, and if you don't have it installed, this is how you install it. So let's go ahead and install this real quick. And now that we have that, you can run script generate nifty. Actually, let me just show you what you can create here. So with the nifty generator, you can create nifty authentication, config, layout, and scaffold. So let's go ahead and create the layout first. And I'm going to call it applications, so it uses application.html.erb. It created those files, and you'll see in here we now have our application file. So let's run this application to see what it looks like. I guess first we need to delete the index.html file, and you know what, we're actually not going to be able to see anything yet because we need to have a controller in place. So let's create a controller first. Let's call it welcome. And in our controller, our welcome controller is going to stub out a welcome page and create here. Command Shift N creates those. It basically creates a new file for you, and call this index.html.erb. And we can pass welcome here, and now we can start our application. We should get something. There we go. So you see we have the layout around this. We have our welcome text, which is within the H1 tag, and you see we have welcome in the title as well. Ryan's layout that he generates actually populates the title from from how I did it here. So if I hit title, if I type title and then pass in any string, it will not only put the title in the header, but it will also put the title right here in the H1 tag. So I don't do that a lot. We'll leave that for right now. I don't know if I'm going to keep it or not, but for right now we'll leave it. So now that we have a layout, why don't we create our authentication? So script generate nifty authentication, and you enter. You see it creates all these files now. Again, I'm a huge fan of this gem. It created everything that we need right now to be able to track our users, have them log in, log out. It created the migration files. It even created the test for it. So let's see what we can do with this. So we have a new sessions controller, which is where we're going to do all our login and log out. And we have a users controller, which is where we have our sign up and our creating account. Let's take a look and see what columns were added by default. So we have username and email, password hash, and password salt. What else do we need? We have a profile, we have the username. Well, for right now, let's just leave it at that. And we'll just leave it at that for right now. And if we need more later, we'll go ahead and add more. So let's run our migration script. Rake db migrate, and now you can see it created that users table. I'm going to modify the routes file here so that we can set our route to the welcome. So now when you go just to the route page, it will show the welcome page. So, oops, I didn't mean to run the migrate again. Let's refresh. Now if we get rid of this, it'll still show that. But if we go to sign up, there we go. We now have our form for signing up, and we can go to login. So why don't we create an account? And I always use cavneb as my username, so cavneb@gmail.com, and put in a password, sign up. Okay, we're logged in. Thank you for logging in. Probably what I want to do is instead of having the root page be a well, how do they do it here? You go to the root page of Twitter. If you're logged in, it'll take you to your page, but if you're logged out, it takes you to this page. So we'll leave it like that for now. We'll have it go back to the welcome page. Let's create a new controller. Actually, let's create our flitter model. So script generate model flitter. Actually, we're going to call it Flit. Instead of tweet, we're going to call it Flit. And we're going to have a user ID, and we're going to have a message, and we have our created at, and what else do we need? Well, we'll just do created at, and for right now I don't think we need anything else, so we go ahead and create that, and I'm gonna modify that a little bit so we can take out the timestamps. Now that we have these, I want to ensure that we don't have any that don't have these things. We want to ensure that all of these fields are created on the database level, and also add the verifications or the validations on the model level as well. So rake db migrate. Okay, there we go. Now that we have that, okay, now that we have that, let's go ahead and modify our model to make sure that we have our association set up. So we're going to say belongs to user, verified presence of user ID, message, and created at. Okay, and we'll go back to the user and set the user to have many flits, and we will actually, let's set up a dependency so that if the user is deleted, so are all of the associated flits. Okay, we're moving along. One thing I like to do so that I can kind of have a lot of data to work with is create a generator file that will generate a bunch of fake data for me. I actually just saw today, I think there was a I can't remember where it was. I saw in one of my news groups that there's a new thing in Rails 2.3.4 that allows for populating data. So Rails 2.3.4, and here we go. It was actually on robbieonrails.com. He talked about this. So I'm going to follow his example, and this is one of the benefits of just keeping up to date with all of your feeds that you read. I do read this a lot. He's one of the guys that I follow. But if you're interested in knowing all of them that I follow, just let me know. I'm not going to use the octopi gem. What I am going to do is create this seeds.rb in the DB folder. So let's go ahead and create that. So now, according to him and according to the documentation, I assume that once we run the rake command, where is it? Let me see if we have a rake command in here. Rake db where is he seeing this? Let's see here. Again, as you can tell, this is very, off the cuff. I read this morning, but I can't remember exactly what command he ran to generate the code. To actually how it would be run. Here it is, break db seed. So did I miss it? I don't see it. Rails-v. Oh, that's why. So I'm going to update Rails real quick. Now, if you're not using the latest version of Rails, what you can do is you can create a task called populate, or a rake task called whatever you want, but that rake task can be basically it's the exact same thing here. I think all this is doing is just saying, okay, this file is specifically for using to populate your database. So now that we have that set up, I'm going to say I'm going to use another gem called Faker, and the Faker gem is awesome. I love it. What it does, and I'm going to go ahead and put this in my environments requirement thing here. So, and what this does is it lets you create real data, real looking data for generating stuff. One other gem I like to use is another Ryan Bates gem, which is Populator. The Populator gem is very nice as well because it allows you to Well, actually, I'll just show you as we go. So we have our populator gem, and as you can see, it allows you to populate X number in this fashion. So it's a DSL for adding data into the using active record. So let's go back to our seeds folder here. I'm going to do require faker, require populator. Now I'm going to say user.populate. We're going to create 10 users, do, and on each user we're going to set the username. And if we go to our faker documentation here, we'll see we have faker internet and username. So I'm going to go ahead and use that faker internet username user.email equals faker internet can't spell dot, and I believe it's email address. Oh, it's just email user.password equals test user.password confirmation equals test. This is just fake data. We can have the passwords all be the same. So if we run that right now, it will create 10 user accounts. What's nice about the populator gem and the way we're doing this is now we can actually, under each one of those users, we can now create associated records to that. So we're going to say flit.populate, and I'm going to give it anywhere from let's say 5 to 10, so it'll randomly choose between 5 and 10 to do. And so let's say flit.message is equal to let's create some random data here. So under the faker we have paragraph. So let's grab a actually let's do a sentence. So we're going to use faker lorem and then sentence. So faker lorem dot sentence. Okay, and I believe that's all we need, because this should populate our username, our user ID in there, and of course we have our created at. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Let's check out our rake tasks one more time. Now we should have db seed. Well, we don't have, oh, well, I guess I gotta update the environment to use 4. Okay, now let's try it. There we are. Alright. So let's run that. Rake db seed. Oh, we need to install the gems. We'll go ahead and install those gems real quick using the rake task to install them. Once that's installed, we'll run db seed again. It says undefined method for password. Why that is, oh, I remember, and I actually spoke to Ryan about this. They don't like you doing it this way because it's not an actual column in the database. This won't work. So instead of doing it this way, I'm going to change it up a little bit and say 10.times do, and within that let's go through and create our users. So user equals user.new, and set all this data here, and then we're going to save it. And then instead of doing it user.all.each, do user. So we have a couple of loops instead of just one loop, but this should work. Now the difference on this is that now we actually have to set the user ID from what's being passed in. So let's try that again. Okay, looks like I can't spell. So Is it like that? I think it's like that. I can't spell. I always get that word wrong. There we go. So now let's go ahead and check out our user count. Okay, we have a lot of users. User.count is 21. Looks like I screwed up a little bit. So before we do this, why don't we just do this? User.destroy all. It probably created the users and then it killed it afterwards. So let's go ahead and run our seed again. That should clear them out, clear all of the associated Flit messages out, and then recreate them. So script console, user.count is 10, flit.count is 81. So there we go. Now we have data that we can work with. And that's what I really like to do. Right at the beginning, I like to have a database full of information that I can work with. So now that we have that, let's create our initial interface. Now when you log in as Twitter and into Twitter, you log into Twitter, and the first thing you see is all of your friends. And so I guess what we need to do, well, I guess we could go either way. For right now, I'm going to set it up so that we can at least see something on the screen, and then we'll worry about the associated relationships. No, let's worry about the relationships first. Okay, so there was a class that we taught in the Utah Ruby user group that where we created another application, and we used a associative or self-referential association. And because I kind of did the same thing before, I'm going to just get the code from there, and I'll explain it as we go. So on GitHub, and I believe it is under urug, and so you can go here anytime. If you go to the urug's wiki, I'm sorry, you got to go, it's under Media Lender, so it's urug/Media Lender. You go to that wiki, and you're going to see a page here, Session 7, Borrowers and Lenders, and that will actually really show us how to do this quite well. We're going to use we're going to create a friendship model. Now, this code was pulled, a lot of it was pulled from the railscast.com episode that talked about self-referential relationships. Let's go ahead and just use this as we go. So, okay, first thing we do is we generate a new model called friendship. All that is basically a pointer model that points to a parent and a child. So the parent in this case would be the user ID, the child would be the friend ID. And we'll migrate that. Now under friendship, which is the model that we just generated, we're going to add these. So it belongs to user and it belongs to friend, and then it validates uniqueness of friend ID based on the user ID. So a user can't have two of the same friend, and it makes sure that they're both there. So very simple so far. And then under user, we're going to add the this code. Oh, let me save that. Add this code. Where do I put it? Let's just put it right there. Oh, you know what? Let's put it down here with the other one. All right. So now a user has many friends, and a user has many friendships, and a user has many friends through friendships. So if that doesn't make sense, you should probably watch the screencast related to, or the Railscast from railscast.com. Here it is, number 163. Great Railscast to watch. It will explain a lot. So now that we have that in place, let's play with it a little bit. So go into our console, and u equals u. Actually, let's say me equals user dot first, u equals user dot last. So me dot username, I'm Kelly. U dot username is Alan Wookert. So I want to add you as a friend. I could say me.friends, me.friends, and it will show that, actually, that should have worked. Did I do something wrong? Let's see here. Undefined method friends for user. That shouldn't have, oh, I didn't save it. That's why. Okay. Let me try that again. Me equals user.first, me.friends. Okay, I have no friends. Alright, so why don't we go ahead and add a friend. Me.friend. Well, one way we could do it is by creating a new friendship and say, okay, me.friendships.build, and then pass in the friend ID is whatever you want it to be. But that's not the way we're going to do that. The way we want to do it is create it so that I can write something like me.addFriend and then pass in that friend's user. So I want to add a new method to do that. So I'm going to create a new method called addFriend. And I'm going to cheat a little bit here because I did do all this before, and copy it from that Media Lender application. Again, this is off the cuff, and I'm not trying to show you how to do everything from scratch. You got to be resourceful. Part of the resource here is that we do have Railscast, and we do have this application that we're able to look at. So you can see friendships.build, passing in the friend ID just like I told you before, and then if the friendship saves, I just print out that okay, or if it doesn't save, I print out okay, well they already exist, because that's the only way it won't save unless there's missing data, but we don't have any missing data here. So now that we have that, I'm going to go and start up the console again and say u equals user.first, and say x equals user.last, and u.addFriend x. Okay, and there is one weird thing about, actually maybe they fixed it, so I'm not even going to worry about it, but now that I do u.friends, we see that their x is now my friend. Now if I was to say x.friends, it wasn't the reverse, so if I add them as a friend, that doesn't mean they're going to be my friend. So that's, that's reality. That's how life is. So anyway, there we go. That's how Ruby is too. All right. So now that we have add a friend, we can let's build a couple more tools here. One thing that we want to do is, this is a great example here. We want to have a little helper file, or a few. Actually, I take it back. I'm jumping ahead of myself. Okay. Now that we have add friends, why don't we modify our seeds file to have some people befriend some other people. I don't know how I'm going to do this yet, but let's give it a shot. Let's create an array. Well, how am I going to do this? Let's see here. So let's say you let's say 3 times do user.find random user.all rand user.count. Actually, we don't need user.find, so we'll do user.all, pull out a random one, and let's add them to friends user.addFriend. And I'm not sure if this will work. I think it'll work. Let's go ahead and test this real quick though and see if that works in the console. So yeah, as you can see, it does pull up a random friend, and then we just add a friend there. So let's go ahead and redo our rake db seeds, Now that's going, DBC, that's going to delete all our users and flits. But now that we have this, we can say, okay, let's grab the first user, and we see, okay, they do have a couple of friends here, or three. They have 3 friends. So there we go. That's a good way to do it. So now we have some more data that does help us out here. Let's just add this. So add friends. Okay, now that we have that, why don't we go ahead and create the interface to be able to add the flits for the user, for the logged in user. So instead of the user going to welcome after they log in, why don't we create a new controller called home. So script generate controller home. And that home is going to be where we go once we log in. In fact, why don't we change it real quick? Let's add a route. We're going to add a new route in here called map.home. Actually, map.home. We want it to be empty, because in reality we don't want anything to show up there. So if that's the case, let me think here. How does Twitter do it? Where is Twitter? Oops. I lost my Twitter. Okay. Okay, if you're not logged in, you're here, but it doesn't show anything there. If you are logged in, same thing. But, okay, so it's session based. So, why don't we make this session based? I think I remember how to do this. We'll find out. Well, I'm gonna do it the easy way for now, and I'm sure there's a better way to do it, but for right now we're gonna use the easy way. So I'm gonna say map.connect or map.home controller is home, and our root is, you know what, this might screw everything up here. I believe you can pass dang it, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. So, you know, I'm gonna set the home controller here, but and then I'm gonna go over here and say, okay, under application controller, let's say authenticate, or actually I think we have a require login under the lib authentication. So login required. So if I put login required as a before filter on the root page, it will log into, it will redirect to the login page. Let's do that. So before filter, and we'll do login required, and then now when we go to the home page, if we're not logged in, it should redirect us over to the index page, or the login page, saying couldn't find user ID with ID equal to 1. I think the reason they did that was because I'm still logged in from before. So I'm just going to do this, reset my browser. We lost all of our pages there, but that's okay. Alright, there we go. So when you go to the home page, it will say you must first log in before you can do anything else. So now that we have this, I'm going to find a username from my list there, from the generated users that we created. say user.first, and okay, here we go, Brian Ocon. We're going to log in as Brian Ocon, and the password is test, as we've created before, and it's not going to work yet because the server is not started. Okay, let's try that again. Oh, let's try that again. Brian Ocon test. Okay, there we go. Now we're where we want to be because it did log us in, however the index page is missing. So we need to create an index page under home real quick. And by doing this, let's say title, welcome, current user dot username. Okay, so we have that. Let's refresh. There we go. Welcome Brian.ocon. That's not how we want it to look, of course, but at least we know we're logged in. Let's create a you know, I'm going to stop it here. We're gonna set this to be our first of a series of screencasts. I'm going to pick up exactly where I left off on the next one. But for right now, this is how you create an authenticated system with self-referential relations, and the next one will be coming shortly.
That was wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great.
Well, it was pretty good.
Well, it wasn't bad.
Well, there were parts of it that weren't very good, though.
It could have been a lot better.
I didn't really like it.
It was pretty terrible.
It was bad.
It was awful.
It was terrible.
Get him away!